The first thing you do is you figure out what your answer is going to be. So you find the question in the problem. So you look around for a question mark, and at the end it says how many acres of each should be planted to maximize profit. So the first thing you have to do is declare what your variables are going to be. It says how many acres of each. So our variables are going to be acres of wheat and acres of rye. That does not take any mathematical ability to look at the problem and figure out what our answer is going to be. It's not going to be dollars. It's not going to be hours. It's not going to be turnips. It's going to be acres of wheat and acres of rye. After you declare what your answer is going to be, you have to figure out how this farmer is being regulated. What are the rules? What are the laws of his farming experience? Okay? He has to plant at least 0 acres of each. Can't plant negative acres. There are several regulations in the problem. Do you see any? Yes?
The way I wrote it was 200x was like 200.
Okay, well, let's just speak in generalities right now. He has a money. This is what Gritch is trying to say. He has a budget.
He has to stay at or under $1,200.
He has to stay at or under $1,200. He has to plant at least 7 acres, but not more than 10. He also has a time crunch. He has to get the planting done in 12 hours. And it takes an hour to plant an acre of wheat and 2 hours to plant an acre. So what we have to do is we have to take all of those limits that the farmer has and we have to put them into math. Okay, so here's one. At least 7 acres. The number of acres of wheat and the number of acres of rye must add up to at least 7. Here's another one. The time crunch. 1 hour for an acre of wheat and 2 hours for each acre of rye has to add up to less than or equal to 12. The difficult part of this is that you have to come up with these yourself. Okay? These examples here are more difficult than what you would see on your test. Your test ones would be easier than this. Money-wise, and this is what Gritch was getting at, $200 for an acre of wheat plus $100 for an acre of rye has to fit into his budget of $1,200. And then the 10-acre limit, he has to plant, his farm's only 10 acres, which doesn't seem very big to me. I'm no farmer, but that doesn't seem very big. Okay, so what we're going to have to do now is we're going to have to graph. There are 6 inequalities up there to graph. 2 of them just tell us that we're in the first quadrant, so we have 4 to graph. Okay, so the zeros just put us in the first quadrant, so we know everything's going to be in the first quadrant. And our 4 that we're going to graph, let's start with those 2. Those are real easy. The first one tells us that our x and y intercepts are 7. And we have to be above that. It said at least 7 acres. So he can't sit there and do nothing. He has to be above that. So my shade for that line is going to be above that line. That's the first time we've seen that. Everything else has been below. And everything else in this problem is below. We have to be under a time crunch. We have to be under budget. We have to be under 10 acres. But for that one, we are above. Okay? The second line has intercepts at 10. And that's the one that we have to be below. So right now, as we sit, our shaded area, our possibilities are the area between the red lines. We have to plan at least 7, so we can't do nothing. So these are out, and these are out because we don't have the land. So these are our options before we get into money and time. Okay? That's what I was just saying. Those two are out. So now let's do time. X plus 2y is less than or equal to 12. X-intercept 12. Y-intercept 6. Okay, we should be getting to a point where you can kind of do those intercepts in your head almost. If not, you can just write them out on paper, or you can do slope-intercept. That's a little more work. The line is right there, and we are below, because we have to be under our time frame. So at this point, we're sitting in this area. This is what we got left before our budget graph, which is this mess. Okay, well, I'm going to get rid of some zeros. I'm going to divide both sides by 100 before I graph it to make things a little bit easier to see. That's perfectly legal as long as you do it to both sides. And I can get my intercepts just by looking at that. X is 6, Y is 12. Very good. That's there. X-intercept 6. Y-intercept 12. Like I told you yesterday, when you start getting into real-world problems, you got to give yourself space for real-world numbers. You know, out to 20, usually. So there's that. And we are under that. Under budget. Which puts our shade in there, in that little triangle. Those are our options. We had a lot of restrictions. Those are the only options based on time, money, and land availability, and our requirement that we plant at least 7 acres. Okay? It's just graphing and shading over and over and over. The corners of our triangle are 5, 2, 4, 4, and 2, 5. On the examples we do, those are going to be integers. Okay? So now what we have to do is figure out which one of those is the best option. If you look back at the problem, it says our profit is $500 for an acre of wheat and $300 for an acre of rye. We haven't used this information yet at all. That's going to be our function that we use to figure out our profit. We want to know which of those gives us the best chance for a profit. There it is. Our best chance for a profit is to go 4 and 4. 4 acres of wheat, 4 acres of rye.